The morning sun slid over the quiet, manicured neighborhood of Silver Grove Estates, illuminating rows of identical houses lined in perfect symmetry. It was the kind of community where lawns were measured, hedges were trimmed to regulation height, and even the mailboxes seemed to salute the rigid order enforced by the HOA. Against this backdrop of forced perfection, something stood out: a weathered motorcycle parked at the far end of a driveway. Black, faded in places, chrome-scratched, the leather seat aged with decades of ghosted fingerprints. It looked like it didn't belong. But the truth was, it belonged more deeply than anyone could have imagined. That motorcycle sat next to a house no one really knew the owner of. A quiet resident. A man who waved politely but kept to himself. A man who didn't fit the HOA's rigid mold and didn't seem interested in trying. His name was Keanu Reeves. Neighbors had seen him at odd hours, sometimes early in the morning carrying groceries for an elderly woman, sometimes late at night returning from long rides with a motorcycle humming softly like a tired beast. But he never made noise, never caused trouble, never broke any rules. The bike, though old, wasn't loud. It wasn't fast. It didn't leak anything. It simply existed. And yet, for the Silver Grove HOA, its existence was unacceptable. On this particular morning, the HOA president, Linda Wexley, stood on the sidewalk staring at the motorcycle as though it personally insulted her sense of order. She wore her signature blue blazer, clipboard pressed firmly to her chest, lips pursed with the energy of someone preparing for a confrontation. She scribbled something aggressively on her clipboard just as Keanu stepped outside. He wasn't dressed like a celebrity or even like someone wealthy. Just a plain black t-shirt, worn jeans, and boots that had traveled many miles on the very machine, now causing discomfort for the HOA president. His hair was tied back casually, faint shadows under his eyes hinting at another sleepless night. When he saw Linda standing there, he stopped, reading her posture instantly. "Morning," he said gently, his voice calm but guarded. Linda didn't return the warmth. Instead, she pointed at the motorcycle as if reprimanding a misbehaving child. "Mr. Reeves," she said sharply, "this vehicle violates the community aesthetic code. It's aged, rusting, not aligned with the property standards of Silver Grove." Keanu looked at the motorcycle, truly looked at it, and something softened in his expression, something private and almost painful. He stepped closer to it, resting his hand briefly on the handlebars. "It's not rust," he said quietly. "Just time." Linda's eyebrow twitched in irritation. "Regardless, I'll have to issue a formal notice. The HOA regulations clearly prohibit the parking of visibly deteriorated vehicles in driveways. It must be repaired, concealed, or removed." The words were delivered like a final verdict. Keanu didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice or demand exceptions. He simply nodded once, slowly, as if absorbing the blow not for himself, but for the machine. The moment Linda walked away, Keanu crouched beside the motorcycle. He traced a finger along a small scratch on the fuel tank, a scratch shaped like a crescent, one he knew by heart. His mind drifted to another time, another place, another person. A roar of laughter echoing beside him, a race down a dusty road, two men riding side by side under a burning sky. His best friend, Jamie, the man who'd taught him how to ride. The man who used to say a motorcycle wasn't metal, it was memory on wheels. Jamie had died many years ago, in an accident no one saw coming. And this motorcycle, this was all Keanu had left of him. For most people, it was just an old machine. For Keanu, it was a living archive of chapters he wasn't ready to close. And now, of all things, an HOA, a committee obsessed with hedges and mailbox colors, wanted it gone. Not because it was dangerous, not because it bothered anyone, but because it didn't look new enough, didn't look perfect, didn't fit the mold. Keanu exhaled slowly. There were battles worth fighting loudly, and battles fought quietly. This one, he felt, deserved quiet strength. He slid his fingers along the handlebars one last time before standing. "We'll figure this out," he whispered to the motorcycle. Not joking, not dramatic, just honest. What he didn't know was that this simple HOA notice would trigger a chain of events that would expose truths buried for years, shake the neighborhood, and force Silver Grove to confront something far greater than a rule violation. Because the day they tried to ban that motorcycle was the day the past decided to return. The violation notice arrived the next morning, taped firmly to Keanu's door as if the HOA feared it might try to escape. A bright yellow slip, printed in bold red letters, announcing that the motorcycle must be removed within 10 days or face escalating fines. Keanu pulled it off gently, reading every word, though the content was exactly what he expected. He wasn't angry, not yet, but something inside him tightened. It wasn't the fine. It wasn't the rules. It was the casual ease with which something meaningful could be dismissed as an inconvenience. Objects mattered to no one until they mattered to someone, and by then, it was usually too late. As Keanu folded the notice and slipped it into his back pocket, he sensed someone watching. Across the street, a young teenager, 16 at most, stood beside a small stack of trash bags he was supposed to take to the curb. But instead of doing that, he stared at the motorcycle with a look of pure fascination. His name was Ethan Mercer, though most neighbors barely remembered it. He wasn't loud, didn't ride bikes, didn't cause trouble. He was the kind of kid who vanished into the background of suburban life. But right now, he was looking at the motorcycle as if it were a living legend. Keanu offered a small nod. Ethan hesitated, then stepped closer. "Is that a '79 CB750? Ethan asked quietly, almost reverently. Keanu raised an eyebrow. The kid knew his machines. "Yeah," he replied. "Good eye." Ethan's face lit up with the kind of excitement you didn't often see in Silver Grove Estates. "My uncle had one. He used to take me for rides when I was little. He said motorcycles were freedom you could touch." Keanu couldn't help but smile faintly. "Someone once told me the same thing." Ethan reached out as if asking for permission to look closer, and Keanu nodded. The boy circled the bike slowly, careful not to touch anything, studying it like a piece of historical art. "You take good care of it," Ethan said. "It's not dirty. It's just old in the right way." Those words hit deeper than the kid could ever know. They echoed something Jamie used to say: that age wasn't damage, it was a roadmap of the places you'd survived. Before Keanu could reply, Ethan's mother, Rachel, stepped out of their house, wiping flour off her hands. "Ethan, don't bother Mr. Reeves," she called. But Ethan didn't flinch. "Mom," he said, "this is one of the cleanest vintage bikes I've ever seen. Why would the HOA want it gone?" Rachel hesitated, her eyes flicking toward Keanu with embarrassment. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "The HOA, they've been strict about everything recently. New president, new rules." She glanced at the notice still in Keanu's pocket. "I'm guessing you got one too." Keanu shrugged lightly. "It happens." But Rachel's expression darkened with something like guilt. "They targeted you first," she whispered. "Some of us noticed." That caught Keanu off guard. "Targeted." She nodded. "They don't like that you keep to yourself. They don't like that you didn't show up to the last meeting. Linda thinks every resident should be actively participating in the community lifestyle. Whatever that means." Keanu knew exactly what it meant: conformity disguised as unity. HOA power wasn't about order. It was about control. And Linda Wexley held that control like a scepter. Before the conversation could go further, a car door slammed down the street. Linda herself strutted toward them, clipboard in hand, eyes locked onto Keanu with forced politeness. "Mr. Reeves," she announced loudly, "I see you've received the notice. I trust you understand the timeline." Her tone implied compliance was not optional. Ethan stepped forward without thinking. "Why does the motorcycle have to go?" he demanded. Linda stared at him as though an ant had spoken. "Because it violates subsection 14C of the HOA Aesthetics Code," she said stiffly. "We maintain a certain standard here." "It is a standard," Ethan shot back. "Just not a new one." His courage surprised everyone, including himself. Linda's lips tightened into a blade. "This is not your concern, young man." Then she turned to Keanu. "There will be no exceptions." She walked off without waiting for a response, leaving behind an uncomfortable silence. Rachel sighed. Ethan muttered something under his breath. But Keanu simply looked at the motorcycle, the last piece of Jamie he still had. 10 days. 10 days to erase a memory because it didn't shine like a new toy. Except, he wasn't going to let that happen. Quiet battles or not, this one was becoming personal. Not because of the rules, not because of the HOA, but because of what the motorcycle meant, and the story no one in Silver Grove had heard yet. A story they were about to learn, whether they wanted to or not. That evening, the neighborhood settled into its usual artificial quiet, the kind you hear in places where noise is considered a crime, and life is meant to follow a strict, HOA-approved rhythm. Lights flickered on in identical windows, sprinklers clicked in unison, cars eased into garages like they were docking into assigned ports. But at the end of Willowcrest Lane, one house stayed dim, its driveway lit only by a single amber street lamp that cast long shadows across the old motorcycle. Keanu sat beside it on the concrete, a cup of untouched tea cooling in his hands. He looked at the motorcycle the way some people look at gravestones, with grief, gratitude, and a feeling that part of themselves was buried somewhere inside the metal. His thumb brushed a faded sticker on the fuel tank, the edges peeling. A sticker Jamie had slapped on after one of their late-night rides. Keanu closed his eyes, and the memory pulled him back like a tide. He was 23 again, roaring down a desert highway with Jamie beside him, both of them laughing so loud it drowned out the engines. Jamie was the kind of person who made the world feel big. Fearless, reckless, magnetic in a way that made life catch fire around him. He rode like he was racing ghosts and winning. They had dreams back then. 2 cheap bikes, 2 helmets, and the entire world ahead of them. Jamie used to say, one day, when we're old and boring, we'll look back at this bike and remember who we were before the world tried to tame us. Keanu felt the echo of that line now, decades later, in a place where the world was trying to tame him. The memories shifted, the last ride. Rain, slick roads, a curve taken too fast. Keanu didn't let himself relive the crash often, but tonight it came back, uninvited. The screech. The flash of metal. The impossible stillness afterward. Keanu had been thrown, battered but alive. Jamie hadn't been so lucky. The bike was salvaged, repaired, and handed to Keanu because Jamie's mother insisted he would have wanted you to keep it. And he did. Through films, through sleepless nights, through every chapter of his life, this motorcycle was the constant thread, a reminder of a friendship that shaped him. A soft sound broke the silence, footsteps approaching cautiously. Ethan stood at the edge of a driveway, hands shoved into his hoodie pockets. "Sorry," the boy said quietly. "I didn't want to bother you. I just saw you sitting out here." Keanu nodded toward the extra step beside him. "You're not bothering me." Ethan sat down, mimicking Keanu's posture. For a moment, neither said anything. The kid looked at the motorcycle, then at Keanu, sensing the heaviness in the air. "Was it your first bike?" he asked carefully. "No," Keanu replied. "It was my best friend's." Ethan didn't speak. He just listened, which struck Keanu as rare for someone his age. Keanu rested both hands on the seat. "We were kids. Thought we were invincible. We rode everywhere. He taught me everything I know about bikes." Ethan studied the motorcycle with new eyes. "It's not just a bike," he said. "It's a story." Keanu responded with a small, almost sad smile. "Yeah, it is." The boy nodded, then exhaled sharply. "Then the HOA. They shouldn't be allowed to take it." Keanu appreciated the sentiment, but he also knew Ethan didn't understand how relentless HOAs could be. "Some battles," Keanu said quietly, "you win by explaining. Some, by waiting." Ethan looked unconvinced. "But this isn't trash. It's history. They can't just call it deterioration. They don't get to decide that." Keanu didn't disagree. He simply didn't know yet how he wanted to handle it. They were silent again until Ethan spoke in a smaller voice. "You know, I kinda get it. The memory thing." Keanu glanced at him. The boy picked at the sleeve of his hoodie. "When my uncle died, the one with the motorcycle, nobody understood why I kept his old keychain. It's rusty. It's cheap. But it's him. Feels like if I lost it, I'd lose the last piece of him." Keanu looked at the kid with a new kind of understanding. They were from different generations, different worlds, but grief spoke the same language everywhere. "Then you understand," Keanu said softly. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, I do." A quiet moment passed between them, One of those rare, unplanned connections life gives you when you aren't looking for it. Then Ethan looked back toward the silver HOA office at the end of the street, its windows glowing like watchful eyes. "They don't know what that bike means to you," he said. "But they will." The words lingered in the air, heavier than the boy intended. Keanu frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Ethan stood, shoving his hands deeper into his pockets as he backed away. "Nothing. Just, they'll know soon enough." Then he walked off, leaving Keanu with a strange mix of concern and curiosity. He didn't know it yet, but Ethan was right. And the first spark of that revelation was already moving through the neighborhood, quietly, unexpectedly, and with the power to change everything. The next 3 days passed with a strange tension hanging over Silver Grove Estates. Neighbors whispered more. People lingered by their windows longer. Cars slowed as they drove past Keanu's house, not out of hostility, out of curiosity. Something was shifting, and though Keanu could feel it in the air, he didn't yet know the source. The violation countdown continued. 7 days left, but he kept to his routine, quietly resilient, quietly patient. The motorcycle remained in the driveway, a silent protest in chrome and history. On the fourth evening, a notification slipped into every resident's inbox. Mandatory HOA emergency meeting, attendance required. The message was signed, of course, by Linda Wexley herself. The subject line radiated urgency like a fire alarm. Keanu received it too, reading it with the same calm expression he used when reading scripts or contracts. Focused, unbothered, but alert beneath the stillness. He knew this wasn't just about a motorcycle anymore. This was a statement. A flex of authority. A warning disguised as procedure. The meeting room in the community hall filled quickly. White walls, cold fluorescent lights, rows of folding chairs arranged with military precision. A podium stood at the front, polished to perfection, as though the HOA expected to broadcast from it. Residents trickled in, taking seats in tight clusters, whispering. Keanu entered quietly and sat in the back, drawing immediate attention. Some whispered his name. Others avoided eye contact. But one person didn't look away, Ethan, sitting beside his mother, Rachel, both wearing expressions that hinted they knew something the others didn't. Linda marched up to the podium, heels striking the floor like gavel hits, her blue blazer practically vibrating with self-importance. "Good evening, residents of Silver Grove," she began, her voice carrying that sharp tone of someone who believed herself indispensable. "We are here to address several community issues, but most importantly, the matter of deteriorated vehicles that compromise our neighborhood aesthetic." Everyone knew exactly which vehicle she meant. She clicked a remote, and the overhead screen lit up with a photo, a large, zoomed-in shot of Keanu's motorcycle, taken without permission, possibly from across the street, possibly by Linda herself. The bold title above it read, "A clear violation of HOA Rule 14C." Murmurs filled the room, some disapproving, some confused, some offended on Keanu's behalf. Linda continued, "This motorcycle, due to its age and visible wear, has been deemed inappropriate for driveway display. It sets a precedent for disorder, and thus—" "Hold on." The voice cut through the room like a blade, young, but loud, clear, determined. Ethan stood. Every head turned. Even Keanu's. Ethan walked toward the front, ignoring his mother's whispered plea to sit back down. He reached the aisle center and faced Linda directly. "You're showing everyone a picture of something you don't understand," he said. His voice trembled at first, but strengthened as he went on. "That motorcycle isn't a junk vehicle. It isn't trash. It's a vintage CB750. It's history, and you're acting like it's a problem because it doesn't look brand new." Linda stiffened. "Young man, you are out of line." "No," Ethan snapped, surprising everyone. "You are. You didn't ask what it meant. You didn't ask whose it was. You didn't even ask why it looks the way it does. You just decided it was a violation because it didn't fit your picture-perfect neighborhood." The room buzzed with subdued gasps. Rachel closed her eyes, bracing herself. Linda's face reddened. "This meeting is not open for public commentary." "Then why call it a community meeting?" Ethan shot back. "A community listens. You don't. Linda opened her mouth to retaliate, but someone else stood, an older veteran named Mr. Harris, who lived 2 houses down from Keanu. People respected him, rarely heard him speak. "Let the boy finish," he said. The weight of his voice alone forced silence in the room. Ethan swallowed, then continued. "That bike, it belonged to someone important. Someone Mr. Reeves lost. Someone he still remembers every time he looks at it. It's not about rules. It's about respect." He turned to face the whole room now. "How would you feel if someone tried to take away the last memory you had of someone you loved?" A hush fell over the hall, not tense, not hostile, just quiet in a way that meant people were listening for the first time. Ethan stepped aside. All eyes shifted to the back of the room, to Keanu. He stood slowly, not out of anger or embarrassment, out of quiet resolve. He walked to the front with measured steps, the room silent as a held breath. Linda visibly tried to regain control, but the moment was no longer hers. Keanu reached the podium. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't dramatize. He simply said, "That motorcycle belonged to my best friend. He died young. We grew up together, rode together, learned life together. It's the last piece of him I have." Some people looked down, moved. Others nodded softly, understanding in ways rules couldn't measure. Keanu continued, "I'll follow the process if I must, but I won't pretend it's just a deteriorated vehicle. It's a memory, a promise, and it's still roadworthy, still clean, still safe." His eyes were calm but unshakably firm. "I'm not asking for special treatment, just understanding." The room sat in stunned silence. For the first time since moving into Silver Grove Estates, Keanu wasn't invisible. His story wasn't hidden. And the HOA's grip on the room, on the narrative, was slipping. What happened next would change everything. The silence inside the community hall felt like a pressure system waiting to break. People shifted uncomfortably, not because of what Keanu said, but because of what it revealed, that this HOA battle was never about a motorcycle. It was about power, control, and how easily empathy had been squeezed out of the neighborhood's culture. For the first time in years, residents weren't just following rules. They were questioning them. Linda Wexley tightened her grip on the podium. Her expression flickered, anger, embarrassment, then something close to panic. She knew the room was slipping away from her authority. "Mr. Reeves," she said sharply, "while we respect your personal history, the HOA cannot make exceptions based on sentimental." She stopped, because the doors at the back of the hall opened. 2 men walked in, one tall, heavy-set, wearing a faded bomber jacket, the other carrying a carefully wrapped object in his hands. People murmured, heads turning. Rachel whispered, "Those are the guys from Lot 19, the ones who run the vintage restoration shop." Ethan's eyes widened. He knew them, but no one expected what came next. The older man approached the front, nodding respectfully to Keanu. "Sorry we're late," he said, glaring briefly at Linda. This seemed important. He unwrapped the object he carried, a framed photograph. He placed it on the podium, facing the crowd. It was Jamie. Not just Jamie, a younger Keanu stood beside him. Both on the same motorcycle, everyone here wanted banned. Gasps echoed through the room. The mechanic cleared his throat. "Jamie Alvarez," he said, pointing to the man in the photo. "He was my cousin. He rode that bike across half the country, treated it like it was his heartbeat." He turned, sweeping the room with firm, unblinking eyes. "And for the record, that deteriorated vehicle has been inspected more times than any bike in my shop. It's maintained better than most brand-new cruisers." He placed a second paper on the podium, an official mechanic certification, signed, stamped, dated last month. Then he added, "And one more thing you should all know. Before Jamie died, he used to say something every time he got on that bike. If anything ever happens to me, Keanu's the one who gets this. He's the only one who understands why it matters." The room was frozen. Even Linda didn't have a prepared line for this. But it wasn't over. The mechanic looked at Keanu with a small, sad smile. "He loved you like a brother. And he'd be proud you still have it. Ethan swallowed hard. Rachel blinked back tears. Even neighbors who had never liked motorcycles felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't a rule violation. It was a story of loyalty, loss, and memory woven into metal. Something deeper than paint, polish, or aesthetics. Keanu stepped back to the front, resting one hand on the photograph. "I didn't bring the bike here to make a statement," he said softly. "I brought it because it still feels like he's riding with me. And I'm not hiding it in a garage like something I'm ashamed of. It's a part of me. A part of him." The room erupted, not with applause, but with voices. "I think the rule needs revising. It's a vintage classic. It shouldn't fall under the deterioration clause. The HOA should focus on real issues, not targeting people. Let the man keep the motorcycle." The shift was seismic. Linda attempted one last grasp at control. "Order. Order. The rules are meant to serve the community," Mr. Harris interrupted firmly, standing tall with the quiet authority of a military man. "Not to suffocate it." He turned to the room. "All in favor of revising Rule 14C to exempt vintage vehicles that are well maintained?" Hands shot up across the hall. Rachel's, Ethan's, the mechanics, the older residents, the young families. Even people who had never spoken in HOA meetings raised their hands. Then slowly, painfully, even Linda's fellow board members lifted theirs. The motion passed. The rule changed. The battle ended. Keanu let out a breath he didn't expect to feel in his chest. Ethan grinned like he'd just won a war. The mechanic clapped Keanu gently on the shoulder. And for the first time since he'd moved into Silver Grove Estates, the neighborhood felt like a community. Outside, as people spilled into the night air, they gathered around the motorcycle, not judging it, but admiring it, asking about its story, touching the chrome as if it carried something sacred. Ethan walked up beside Keanu. "We did it," he whispered. Keanu looked at him, this kid with too much heart, too much courage, and nodded. "Yeah," he said. "We did." Ethan glanced at the photograph tucked under Keanu's arm. "Think your friend would have liked this place?" Keanu smiled softly, eyes drifting to the bike. "Tonight," he said, "I think he did." The engine of the old CB750 hummed to life, not loud, not flashy, just steady, like a heartbeat restored. The neighborhood listened, and not a single person complained.